So welcome to the simulation and extended reality session. We'll start by telling you reasons you might want to use simulations, and then show you some examples, and then go over the process for creating them.
Okay.
So the main reasons for using them are if a simulation is safer than real life practice, and to enhance the learning experience through immersion and engagement, or because the resources to do live training exercises are too expensive or unobtainable. You may have lab equipment may be too expensive, or you might have consumables like cadavers that are too expensive to keep replacing every time you have to do another lab session. With a simulation, you don't consume either one of those, so save on that. And space might be an issue. You might not, individual departments might not have space to build labs, but they can share a common virtual reality lab. Or you might have, you might want to do it on a location that's unreachable, or that's hypothetical or fictional. For example, we made a lab nav simulation that allows ROTC units that don't have access to actual plots of land to practice land navigation to do it virtual. And some real life practices might be unsafe. Like there are certain medical practices that you wouldn't want to do on a live volunteer because it's not safe. With a simulation, because there are no serious consequences, students are able to explore and try different things.
And of course, with COVID-19, that idea of a simulation, it can't potentially is even more important.
Sure.
Yeah, some methods are good for distance learning, and finally, simulations can engage a student's senses more fully than other activities, which can increase retention. And it allows them to actually do something, to interact with and get engaged in the subject matter. So these are a list of the platforms that can be used to run simulations, and we'll show you some examples of some of them. First example I'm going to show you. Just going to minimize this. First example, this is a WebGL app. It's a cockpit simulator that allows the
walk you through the normal APU start sequence. Click the button below to begin.
Make it full screen.
Prior to starting the APU on the first flight of the day, perform the fire detection and fire X monitor system test. Turn on the highlighted battery master switch.
So basically, it takes you through all of the steps you need to do.
Indicating the fire system message is illuminated. Press the highlighted ELEC synoptic display button on the center. Press both the left and right highlighted boost bumps.
I'm going to run through this a little quickly since we've limited on time.
Right. So someone's created this video, and was that here at Western, or because it doesn't look like photos, doesn't look like a video, it looks animated, right?
Yeah, what you're seeing is not a video. It's the actual WebGL app, and I'm interacting with it right now.
So Karen, both Greg and I use a similar tool called Unity, which is primarily used for game development, but used for lots of other things. And so it allows for the creation of as full as you want, 3D environment to simulate. So it's very similar to making a video game. And so instead, we're making simulations using that same technology, so that it can appear that you're, in the cockpit at one level of reality or another. And so in that instance, it's more of something you'd run just in a browser or on your desktop, but it could also be viewed in virtual reality if it was set up to work that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is another example. This is a teaching aid rather than something the student uses like the one I just showed you. This is one that the instructor might use and share a screen with the students. And you can do things like, this is a geology aid. And this shows different ground layers, and you can move them around. And there are different ones you can choose. Ones with contour maps. You can also go into draw mode and draw over it and erase. So that's just an example of a teaching aid that you can make with this as well. The next thing I show you, this will be a video, is the Oculus VR simulation of the land navigation I was talking about earlier. And you see, this is a Oculus virtual reality, and you have hands and a watch that for telling you time, because this is a timed exercise. That's a list of controls. It's one of the items you can grab in the scene and hold on to, and once you grab it, it follows you around. This is a counter for counting your paces, which is one of the things they have to do. They have to count their paces over a certain distance. Counts the paces, you can stop it and you can reset it. And that's grabbable too. Now I'll go over to the table with some of the other equipment. You have a map of the area. On top of the map, you have a protractor that can be slid up and down or back and forth, so that they can check their angles. Because they'll use the compass for land navigation, which you can see on your left. There's a pencil that you can grab, and you can use it to make marks on the map, like so. And you can use it to draw lines between the marks. To use as guidelines. You can also turn the pencil over and use the eraser. And you can pick up the map. And that's just a card with the locations that they have to find. When they find the location, it gets marked with a check mark. Starting location is already checked off. And then you have the compass. The needle always points to the virtual magnetic north. And the little black line indicates which way the compass is turned, and you can turn the compass back and forth to get a bearing. And that's about it. Last thing I'll show you is this is a HoloLens. It's augmented reality where you render a hologram into the real world. You can see the real world. Sorry about the noise. This was filmed filmed at the airport in Battle Creek, so. But you can see the engine is interactable. You can turn it on and off. You can highlight certain parts and get descriptions of them. So this is good if you want to mix holograms with the real world. And now I'll let Kevin show you some of what he's been working on.
And welcome to our new participants. So just to be clear, everything that we're showing today has been created here at WMU. So we have over the last few years been able to sort of ramp up these capabilities. And what we had on an earlier slide was the software that we use is pretty versatile. So we can deliver on multiple different platforms depending on the needs that we have. So like the next thing that I'm going to show is a desktop application. Initially, I probably would have developed it in VR, but because we can't really put students into a VR lab right now because of COVID, you know, the amount of time it would take to clean the headsets and get them prepared and changed would, you know, just make it really inefficient. We instead decided to develop it initially as a desktop application, more like a video game, with the idea that we would convert it later. And the stuff that we're showing pretty much would fall pretty much under the hardcore category of simulation, but any of this stuff could also be more game-like potentially. So we're not doing scoring, we're not, you know, shooting things, we're not doing any of those game-like activities. But it doesn't mean that we couldn't. Just the particular projects that we're showing here, and of course, often for education, simulation is the best fit. So let me see. Yes, Greg.
Speaking of scoring, it is possible to add tests that they do in the simulation.
Yep. So let me go bring up. I'm going to bring up this video real quick, and then I'm going to make sure I'm sharing it properly. Let me go back to here, and I'm going to share. I think I'm just going to share my screen. And can you guys see this video? Is that showing up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So this is a video of a virtual reality application that I developed with Susan Houtrout in the Bronson School of Nursing. And so I'm going to click play. This is actually the tutorial. This software comprises 5 different modules plus a tutorial that do really detailed simulations. So in this tutorial, it's telling you how to pick up objects because some people have never done VR before. It shows you how to operate the objects. The view is a little bit compressed because in VR you'd have a bit of a wider view, but because I've recorded it on video, it seems a little bit narrower. So the thermometer actually, for example, knows when it's in the right place or not. You can teleport around the room to move into different locations. We developed a computer, so you can actually type on the computer, type on keypads. So we did our best to simulate, number one, as much detail as possible in the real world. And we found that as we developed more, we were really happy with the amount of detail that we were able to simulate. It took a while, but we were able to do a lot of things. So, for example, you can remove caps from bottles, you can open packages. And so we did our best to really try to be as sort of one-to-one to the real world as possible. In the nursing program, they have a big simulation room, and they have issues with access. They have a bunch of students who need to be in there. And when they do these types of procedures, they validate them. They have to be validated with a professor. And so the professor has to be there. If they mess it up, they have to reschedule it. So the idea of going to a simulation was to try to give them more consistent access to practice so that they weren't just limited to when the lab was open and when the faculty member was there. So here they're actually drawing liquid into the syringe. There's a safety cap that you have to choose to open or close. And then here we actually attach it to the port and are able to inject it. All right, I'm going to jump into just another quick video of this that shows a little bit more detail. Close this one. So this one is more of a full scenario. It uses some of the similar steps. And what we've set up is that there is actually a guided mode. So there's actually, I just paused, there's a step. It tells you what to do next. So when students start, they can go into this initial, what we call demonstration mode, and it will sort of prompt them each step at a time. Log into the computer, enter the code to the MedCart so that they can come in, practice with the steps, and then they can also come back in later and do the steps and without those prompts. And then when they're finished, we have it set up so that as they do these steps, we actually record all these different interactions. So it will record each of these steps, and it even knows, for example, how long the student cleaned the top of the vial for. We actually record times on that so that we know if they did that properly. And then when they're finished with each scenario, they have the opportunity to review the steps and if they did them in order or not. And then they have the chance to send them to their professor. We developed a really intricate syringe where it can actually draw air in, it can draw fluid in from vials, it can eject fluid out, and it can put fluid into actually the port that's attached to the student's arm. I went back because I forgot the vial because I have to scan it. So now we log into a second computer, and we have a scanner that's able to scan the wristband and to scan that. So we've worked hard to get into a lot of detail, and we've had excellent feedback. This one actually has been used in classes with students, and we've had really excellent feedback in terms of the students. We had like 90% positive feedback from students who felt that it was quite realistic, that they love the idea of being able to practice. And in fact, some of the feature improvements came from talking to the students. This that I'm launching right now is the newest thing, and you're going to kind of see a bit of software that's actually in progress, which is a wound care scenario, working with, again, Susan Hautrow in nursing. And in this one, there's a number of different scenarios where you can click on different people. And again, a lot of the graphics are just in progress. So here we get more of a narrative about what happened to this person and what might be wrong with them. And then from here, you launch into the scenario. So this was developed to run more like a video game. So I'm running this with my mouse right now in front of you, and with the idea that maybe down the road we'll convert this to VR. So we can start by, for example, running the hand sanitizer. And here we get these highlights. We hit the E key, and it runs. I can come over here and talk to the patient, and I go into a dialogue where I can ask the patient, what is your name, for example, and we get an answer back. And this all changes depending on which character you choose to interact with. What is your date, of birth? And then it gives us the date of birth, which is part of the data. And then, are you allergic? Let's do that. It is. I'm allergic to sulfa and penicillin. And then up here, this is actually temporary, just so I see what's going on. It's actually listing me each step that I'm doing. So I completed the hand sanitizer step, and I completed the question the patient step. I can go over here and get my scanner. And actually, then I'm going to set it down. I'm going to open this drawer, and I'm going to scan. And you can see I've got some temporary boxes. Eventually, these will look like different types of dressings. I can scan this one. And it told me, yep, I scanned bio-occlusive, which is a type of dressing, and then I can pick the dressing up. And I can come over here, and then I can apply the dressing. Any object in the scene can be inspected. So if I hit I, it actually, I missed a step. I was supposed to determine what stage this was. So you can look at objects and find out what they are and get information on them and have a picture of them. And again, this will collect all the data. The next steps we're working on is when the student finishes, we're trying to give them results that have a little bit more context to them, so that if it says, oh, you put on, the Tegaderm dressing instead of bio-occlusive, it would give you some information about why one might be better than the other. Well, you should use Tegaderm because it's a stage 2 wound and it does this type of effect on it. And again, we're working on having the results then being emailed to the students when it goes to them. So those are some examples of stuff that we've done here over the last few years that we're hoping might spur some ideas for people to work on. Greg, do you want to fire up the slides again?
Oh, sure.
Just we'll go to the last few, and then we have some time left for questions.
For some reason I can't seem to.
So without those up, I'm looking at them here. So if you want to get started, if you're interested in thinking about developing some content like this for your class, your first step would be to say, contact Greg or I, so that we can sit down and just initially have a conversation. As you may have seen, a lot of this stuff is really different, right? The flight sim is really different from the nursing stuff. First thing would be for us to sort of sit and evaluate, try to figure out what is the best format. I've talked to faculty who've had an idea, and after discussion, we determined, well, it wasn't a great fit for a simulation. Maybe it was better for being on a video, for example. So not everything is a great fit. The development cost is free. So if you have a project idea, we're able to get started on that right away. We are, however, looking for projects that, if we have to prioritize, that might meet some of these priorities on the left. So if you have a strong curricular need, if it really helps with the class, particularly if it's a COVID impacted need, if you have something that you're not able to do because of COVID, that's something we'd like to be able to help with. If you have a good educational reach, so for example, this wound sim we're thinking it's going to be able to be used not just in the nursing program, but also in areas like social work and some of the other nursing areas where they might run into this. We have to look at the scale and feasibility. The wound care sim that I'm developing, I actually have just been doing over the summer, and that one was pretty easy to take on because we already had a lot of the assets, the models and the items that we had created for the nursing scenarios. So that made it really easy. But the initial VR big nursing sim has taken place over several years. So for us, that will be one of the things that we measure. And then also marketability. We're looking to create things that can be sold to other places, either professionally or educationally. So at the moment, we're basically in a sort of a first come, first serve. And then we'll be using this sort of priority to figure out how many projects we take on or how we prioritize which ones we are putting our effort into. And then you can go ahead and jump to the next slide if you don't mind. Other sort of associated services or skills that we have, 3D modeling. We use 3D motion capture for full body motion capture. We have that available, animation, and also motion graphics as well. So outside of the simulation, we also have a pretty wide set of skills that we would be able to potentially apply to content that you might need for your classes. So I think that's pretty much everything that we have. Really interested in fielding any questions that any of you might have about this.
So somebody else is going to. Okay. Do you have the tools to not only like to grade automatically and incorporate the student feedback? So at the end of the exercise, the student knows already how many points they received, and besides of the feedback, this is something that the skill you need to improve and so on. Or you miss step or whatever the case.
Right. I haven't, Greg, I haven't directly integrated anything, for example, into e-learning yet.
I'm still working on a method that will allow at least WebGL apps to be embedded in an e-learning module. And if you do that, then you can have tests within the e-learning module, and the score would be published to the e-learning module. Also, yeah, we can do tests in any of the on any of the platforms, and they can get immediate feedback about their score at the end.
Yep.
So yes,
in the nursing simulation, when you finish doing one of the simulations, one of the scenarios, it comes up right in front of you with a list of all the steps that you did and the order that you did them in. And so the student can, number one, immediately see whether or not they did them out of order. In that particular project, we're not specifically scoring them. The faculty member was keeping it sort of pass-fail. It was a required thing, but they just sort of had to do it, partially because it was brand new. But we certainly could have issued them a score. And like I said, for this new one that we're developing, we're working to just provide them with more context so that they know why they got it wrong or why they should have picked something over another thing. So yeah, I think there's, I mean, I can't say with 100% certainty, but I'm pretty sure that we could integrate the results from this into e-learning and kick a score back to the students.
Yeah, with there are some current WebGL apps that we've made that do have tests attached to them, and up until now, we didn't have a way of integrating it with e-learning. So basically at the end, after you finished the test, you were given your score and you were taken to a certificate that you filled out and you sent to the instructor showing that you completed the module and got this score.
This is something that I will be interested in. Thank you.
Sure.
Sure.
I have a question about the nursing.
Mhm.
It sounds like there's almost like a template, or parts of it can be templates that you can apply to maybe other scenarios.
Somewhat. We were able to.
Modularize stuff.
What was that?
I said we do try to modularize stuff so it can be reused.
Yeah, actually, I was been able to apply a lot of lessons that I learned from the VR nursing to the new wound care sim. So the new wound care sim is much more templated, and we've worked to separate the data from the activity so that it's just more flexible. So if you plan, I would say that we could have planned better for that in the nursing sim, but it was so new and it was so complex that we didn't put our effort into that area to template it. But it certainly could be set up that way. And we were able to do things like, there are a couple of scenarios, several scenarios that are similar to each other. So we were able to basically take one and duplicate it and then make changes to it to make the second one. So yeah, as much as possible, we try to do that because then it just speeds up potential development in the future if you can take advantage of stuff you've built already.
Right. And
Yep.
you could add more people to the scenario, right? I mean, like instead of just a patient, maybe also a family member.
Right. In one of the other scenarios, we do actually have a second nurse in the room, because for certain, we have one that's a blood administration. And so you have to have a second nurse to confirm the blood order and that it's the right blood. And so we actually use voice recognition to do that. For the wound care sim, we actually went with text instead of voice because, again, with COVID, when we're doing it in VR, I know what hardware they're using. They're in a VR headset, and I know it has a microphone in it. And today, when we finish the wound care sim, it may very well be that we have students running it in their apartments off the web, and so I won't be able to ensure that they'll have the same hardware. So we have to make, every project's a little bit unique in that we have to think about what's the platform and how are we delivering it and what are the important parts of the output so that we can figure out what the best fit is for that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for a sort of application where you kind of make your own lessons within the application, that's possible too.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, great. I want to talk to another faculty member about this.
Okay.
I'll encourage you, because you're doing this again, what, Friday, tomorrow, or next week or sometime?
I think next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
I'll encourage you to.
And we will put a recording of this up. Should be up today or tomorrow if they want to view that. And then, of course, anybody can contact us via email as well. So we should be easy to find in the directory. So we're happy to. And again, I'm happy to chat with anybody, even if it's a wild idea. I've had, it's like, I don't know. It's kind of like you have to talk about 100 projects to get 10 to go. It's like it's like a 10 to 1. You kind of start, and then sometimes they work out, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes that conversational, just sort of brainstorming, is one of the most important parts. And also, if you're going to get invested in this and you want to develop it, it will be a lot of work for any of you who decide you want to develop content, because you'll have to be the content expert for this. And so you'll want to make sure that you're investing in something that you're going to be excited about as well. But we now have some really solid capability here on campus to be able to create some I think some really strong educational items.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, if there are no further questions, thanks for showing up, and
Great.
Nice day.
Yeah. Take care, everybody. Let us know if you need anything. We'll be happy to follow up.
Thank you both. Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Well, do you want to go with that recording?
I think it was fine.